war has cast a long shadow.
A lot of people out there think the government has failed them.
Howitzers standing ready to strike targets as far as 20 miles away.
Triggered an epic humanitarian crisis.
What worries you about our national picture?
Are you ready for this world that we are facing today?
What's the situation there?
How do you explain that?
Next season, Frontline takes you inside the stories that matter.
People will not come in unless they come in legally.
Intimate stories from both sides of the border.
The people that elected him are going to expect him to be extremely tough. Follow the law to the T.
People are pouring across the southern border.
What are we doing in this country that we keep on repeating the same mistakes and dealing with xenophobia and racism just to satisfy what?
An epic journey, 3 years in the making, into the heart of a global conflict.
I think the Americans have never really understood the depth of the antagonism between militant Shiaism and militant Sunnis.
It is a power struggle between Iran and Saudi Arabia for dominance of the Middle East and the Muslim world.
The little-known story of the only bank indicted for mortgage fraud after the financial meltdown.
We are announcing the indictment of Abacus, a federally chartered bank that has been catering to the Chinese immigrant community since 1984.
Too big to fail turns into small enough to jail, and Abacus is small enough to jail.
That we are part of the cause of financial crisis, almost laughable.
The battle over the health of our planet and who's running the EPA.
Science tells us that the climate is changing, and then human activity in some manner impacts that change. The ability to measure with precision the extent of that impact are subject to continuing debate and dialogue.
There's nothing wrong with climate. It will change no matter what we do.
What the American people are expecting is the EPA doesn't turn into every polluter's ally. Otherwise, we're going to have a fundamental conflict of interest.
And a special 2-part investigation of what Vladimir Putin wants.
Did the Trump campaign coordinate with the Russians?
Ongoing FBI investigation.
The issues become overly politicized.
The efforts by a foreign adversary to interfere and undermine our democratic processes pose a serious threat to all Americans.
Only by understanding what the Russians did can we inoculate ourselves from further Russian interference that we know is coming.
Thank you. It's actually always hard to follow a big, amazing promo about our series, but I'm really proud of the season to come. And as you can see, we're really tackling the hardest issues of our times. And we feel so grateful to be here tonight, all of you in the room supporting our really important work. But also a special shout out to John Abbott for believing in really tough but fair investigative reporting. It's not an easy thing to do at the top of a big foundation, but we really appreciate it. We have felt nothing but support in the last number of months to do the work as we've always done it, and I'm eternally grateful. And I'm just so glad to see so many of you in the room tonight. In fact, I was thinking as I was standing off to the side that because I know the Frontline story, what I really want to know is what you want to know about Frontline. But first, I'm going to tell you a bit about where we are, how we're evolving, where we're going, and then I really do want to leave time for all of you to ask the questions that are on your mind, to share thoughts that you've had as you've been watching us the last number of months, to share some of your concerns and questions that you may have about journalism and fake news and what's happening to the news industry. So one of the premises, and this is why I am here, is that everything at Frontline starts with journalism. So you may see our films in long form and short form now. You may see a story on the web. This is really important as we talk more about how we're evolving. But the truth of the matter is every single thing that we publish is journalism. In fact, so much so that even our audience team, the people who do the hard work of getting the word out about our work, is led by a journalist herself, Pam Johnson. I believe she's here. I just saw her. Hey, Pam. She deserves a big, big applause. Pam is a real treasure because she actually is a journalist herself who really then started to learn about the new audience work that we need to do at Frontline. And so she leads a team of really nimble and amazing digital audience leaders. And what we have been able to do over the last year, as I'm about to show you, is remarkable, in part because the people who run Frontline, myself, Andrew Mez, Jim Bruchali, and a couple of other people at the very senior level editorially can trust Pam and her team that she's going to be following the same journalistic standards that we all do, so that when she's on Facebook or when we're on Instagram, or in many cases when we're actually trying to distill the work we do and tell them in shorter form, we're really telling stories that have our journalistic DNA in it. And it's really important for you all to know that as we think about moving on to new platforms, that's what we're carrying with us. Of course, at the heart of what we do is our documentary films. And one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, and this is just a question I'd love to ask all audiences, is how are you finding us now? How many of you watch us on television still? That's great, right? Well, our most important and biggest audience is actually still on TV, and they watch in real time, which is wonderful for us. And they're a really big and righteous audience for us. How many of you watch on digital or stream us on your laptops? Okay, well, that's about right. That's about what our audience looks like now. We have an amazing, really, truly astounding audience that is growing on digital. But what I love is that our broadcast audience is alive and well. They're solid and they're growing too. And so as I talk through ways that we are capturing people on broadcast, we're also looking at this really amazing growth that we're seeing in digital. So what we're starting to see is that we still have a big audience that finds us on television. And what I'm really encouraged by is as things get louder, right? Cable is alive and well, as you all know. We actually do better than the cable news shows that you see in primetime still in terms of the people coming to watch us. And so why is that important? Clearly, we want Frontline's broadcasts and our documentary series to survive in this landscape, right? And the idea that people can't watch for a long time or people are distracted, that is true, and we find that. But what we find more than anything is that people are still finding us. And actually, we look at the really important data of how people watch us, and they watch the whole film. That's what's really amazing. So what we say at Frontline all the time is, if we tell the story well, if it's a well-told story, and we're really delivering to you original reporting inside it, many, many people, most of our audience will stick with us to the end, even though I know we're on late for some of you, and myself as well. People who have children, young children, and people who don't want to stay up until 11. I am amazed at the millions of people who stick with us. And so that's very encouraging for us. What we try to do is we also make sure that our films are available online. Do you guys all know that every single one of our films streams for free online? Raise your hand if you knew that. Okay, so about half of you knew that. What I find more and more is that about half the crowd knows that actually our films are available. So if you miss us, you can find us. And that's the key to success in this new landscape. We're available for free. And one of the things we talk about at Frontline is my firm belief, and this really comes from my upbringing, but also my firm belief that public media has to survive, is that really trusted, responsible journalism that is available to people of all economic brackets. So people who can't afford to pay for the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times can find Frontline online, and you can find us on television, and you don't have to pay for it, and you can get educated at the same time, right? So one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is that the cost is a lot for someone to pay for an actual traditional newspaper. So when younger people are finding their news on Facebook, in large part when you dig in to ask them why, they say, well, we would never be able to pay for a newspaper subscription. So we're finding ourselves in a rare position of being one of the only places out there that delivers day in and day out on trusted news that people don't actually have to pay for. And I think that's huge as we start to talk about, as we go on in my talk, about how we're really at Frontline conscious about not being inside an echo chamber, right? Not being inside a sort of bubble that we all live in different bubbles, right? And this assumption that we live in one bubble is never true. But the fact of the matter is that this is one of the only spaces that we can say we actually reach across the divide economically, and I think it's really important.